A man gets back in a race car for the first time since burying his little brother. Instead of falling apart, he nearly wins. That's not a movie script. That's what Kurt Busch just did at Le Mans. 47 days after Kyle Busch's sudden death shook the entire NASCAR world, his older brother strapped in, hit almost 200 miles an hour, and drove home a podium finish that nobody saw coming. Stick around, because what happened on that track and what Kurt said before it is heavier than any stat sheet. Here's the breakdown. Kurt Busch competed this past weekend in the Historic Sportscar Racing series at the legendary Le Mans circuit in France. This wasn't just any race weekend. It marked the first time in nearly 50 years of HSR history that the series ever raced overseas. 3 races were on the card. In race 2, Busch drove his #1 Chevrolet Camaro to a third-place finish, his onboard camera clocking him at 197 miles an hour at one point. He snatched that final podium spot by outbraking a competitor into the last chicane, winning the position by a margin of just 0.011 seconds. That's razor thin. That's the kind of finish that gets replayed for years. And for Kurt Busch personally, it was his first competitive lap since his younger brother Kyle, a 2-time Cup Series champion, passed away on May 21st at just 41 years old. To understand why this podium hits different, you have to understand what NASCAR just lost. Kyle Busch wasn't just a champion. He was the winningest driver in the sport's history across all 3 national touring series, with 234 total career victories. No one, not Petty, not Earnhardt, not Gordon, has matched that number. Just 6 days before his death, Kyle won a Truck Series race at Dover. 6 days. He went out on top, still competing at the highest level, still doing what he loved. His official cause of death was hemorrhagic shock combined with disseminated intravascular coagulation, a condition tied to sepsis and what was described as bacterial pneumonia that had been building for days, possibly weeks. In plain terms, his body was fighting an infection that spiraled fast, and it happened suddenly, without the kind of warning that gives a family time to prepare. That's the part that makes this so brutal for the racing community. Kyle wasn't retired. He wasn't hurt, he was racing, winning, and gone within a week. Kurt, meanwhile, had already stepped away from full-time Cup Series competition back after the 2022 season. So this HSR race at Le Mans wasn't just his return to a track, it was his return to competitive racing period, and he chose to do it on foreign soil, on one of the most demanding circuits on the planet, with his brother's memory riding shotgun before the green flag dropped. Kurt made it clear this wasn't just another race for him. He said Kyle's spirit would be with him for the first time on one of racing's biggest stages, and that Kyle would have wanted nothing more than to be right there running alongside him. That's not a driver going through the motions. That's a man racing through grief in real time, in front of cameras, in front of the world. Now let's talk about what this actually means, strategically and emotionally, because there's a lot going on under the surface. First, the mental side. Getting back into a race car that fast after losing a sibling is either the healthiest thing Kurt could have done or an enormous risk. Motorsport demands total focus. One lapse in concentration at nearly 200 miles an hour, and the consequences are catastrophic. Grief messes with reaction time, with decision making, with the exact split-second judgment calls that separate a podium from a wall. So why do it? Because for lifelong racers, the car isn't an escape for processing loss. It's often the only place that still makes sense. Kurt has spent almost his entire life defining himself through competition. Sitting at home with that grief, with no outlet, might have been the more dangerous option. Second, the symbolism of Le Mans specifically. This wasn't a random comeback race. Historic Sportscar Racing chose this exact weekend to send the NASCAR Classic Series overseas for the first time in its near 50-year existence. Kurt could have skipped it, could have waited for a quieter, lower-pressure return. Instead, he chose the biggest possible stage. That's either supreme confidence or it's a deliberate decision to make the tribute count for something. Third, the competitive angle. A 0.011 second margin for third place tells you Kurt wasn't just showing up to survive the weekend emotionally, he was racing to win position, fighting for every inch on the track. That's significant. It tells us his instincts, his car control, his competitive fire, none of that eroded during his time away or during this personal tragedy. If anything, it might have sharpened his focus. Is this smart or dangerous? Honestly, it's both. It's a calculated risk that paid off publicly, but the private toll of what Kurt is carrying into every lap is something no stat sheet will ever capture. The reaction across the racing world has been a mix of admiration and heartbreak. Longtime NASCAR fans are calling this one of the most emotional storylines of the year. A Hall of Famer honoring a Hall of Fame caliber brother in the most fitting way possible, behind the wheel. At the same time, there's an undercurrent of concern. Analysts and fans alike are watching closely to see how Kurt handles the emotional weight of a full season, not just a single tribute weekend. One emotional high at Le Mans is one thing. Sustaining that through months of racing without his brother in the garage is another entirely. Expect tributes, retrospectives, and emotional segments from every major racing outlet as the anniversary of Kyle's death approaches and as Kurt continues racing throughout the year. Let's talk about where this goes from here. Two scenarios. Best case, Kurt channels this grief into a redemption arc. He races more, honors Kyle at bigger events, maybe even chases a symbolic win at a track that meant something to both of them. The racing community rallies around him, and this becomes one of the most inspiring comeback stories in recent motorsport memory. Worst case, the emotional toll catches up to him. Grief doesn't operate on a schedule, and there could be a race weekend down the road where it hits him hard, on track, at speed, when it matters most. Motorsport has no room for hesitation, and if Kurt's focus wavers at the wrong moment, the consequences could be severe. Nobody can predict which version plays out, but every lap Kurt Busch takes from here forward is going to be watched a little more closely than before. So here's the question: is Kurt Busch honoring his brother the right way by getting straight back behind the wheel, or should he have taken more time away from racing entirely? Drop your take in the comments. I want to hear whether you think this podium finish was a tribute or a warning sign. If this story hit you the way it hit us putting it together, do us a favor and hit subscribe. We're covering every angle of this story as it develops. We'll see you in the next one.